A poor woodcutter lived near a vast forest with his wife and 2 children. The boy was named Hansel, and the girl Gretel. Times were harsh, and the family struggled daily to find enough food. When famine swept through the land, the woodcutter could no longer provide even a crust of bread for his family. Every night, as he lay in bed, he worried over their fate, tossing and turning in anguish. One evening, his wife, a hard-hearted woman, spoke with cold practicality. "Husband," she said, "we cannot go on like this. There is no food, and soon we will all starve. Tomorrow morning, we must take the children into the thickest part of the forest, leave them there, and save ourselves." The woodcutter's face paled. "How can I abandon my own children to die in the forest? Wild animals will tear them apart," she scoffed. "Then do you propose we all starve? Perhaps you'd like to start carving coffins for us now?" She berated him until, worn down by her words and despair, he reluctantly agreed. "But my heart breaks for my children," he murmured. In the small room they shared, Hansel and Gretel lay awake, too hungry to sleep. Hearing the plan, Gretel began to cry. "Hansel, what will we do?" "They mean to leave us to die." "Don't cry, little sister," Hansel whispered, holding her hand. "I will find a way to save us." When the house was quiet and their parents were asleep, Hansel slipped outside. The moon shone brightly, illuminating a patch of white pebbles near the house. They glittered like silver coins in the moonlight. Hansel gathered as many as his small pockets could hold and crept back inside. "Sleep now, Gretel," he said softly. "We will be all right." At dawn, the stepmother roused the children roughly. "Get up, you lazy bones. We are going to gather wood." She handed them each a small piece of bread. "Here, take this for your lunch. Don't eat it too soon, for there will be nothing else." As they walked into the forest, Hansel paused often to look back. "Why do you keep lagging behind, Hansel?" asked the woodcutter. "I am looking at my little white cat sitting on the roof, waving goodbye." Hansel replied, "Fool," the stepmother snapped. "That is no cat. It is the morning sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel had not been looking at a cat. Each time he paused, he dropped a white pebble along the path. When they reached the heart of the forest, the stepmother said, "Children, gather wood. I will start a fire to keep you warm." Hansel and Gretel hurried to collect sticks, piling them until the flames roared. "Now sit here by the fire and rest," the stepmother said. "We will return soon after chopping more wood." The children waited, their small hands stretched toward the fire's warmth. As the sun climbed high, they nibbled on their bread. They heard the steady thudding of an axe and believed their father was nearby, but it was a trick. The sound came from a branch the stepmother had tied to a tree, swaying in the wind. When night fell, the fire burned low and the forest grew dark and cold. Gretel began to cry. "How will we ever find our way home?" she sobbed. "Don't worry," said Hansel. "The moon will rise, and we will follow the pebbles I dropped." When the full moon rose, its silvery light illuminated the path of pebbles. Hansel took Gretel's hand, and they followed the trail back home. They arrived at dawn, knocking softly on the door. Their stepmother opened it and feigned surprise. "You naughty children, why did you sleep so long in the forest?" Woodcutter, however, embraced them, tears streaming down his face. He had deeply regretted abandoning them. Not long after, famine struck again. This time, there was even less food. Late at night, Hansel and Gretel overheard their stepmother whispering to their father, "We have only half a loaf of bread left. This time, we must take the children deeper into the forest. They will never find their way back." The woodcutter protested weakly. It would be better to share the last bite with them. But his wife was relentless. "If you won't do it, we'll all starve. You agreed before, and you will again." Hansel tried to sneak out for more pebbles, but the door was locked. He comforted Gretel as best he could. "Don't cry, sister. God will help us." In the morning, their stepmother gave them even smaller pieces of bread. On the way to the forest, Hansel crumbled his bread in his pocket, dropping small pieces along the path. "Why do you keep stopping?" asked his father. "I'm saying goodbye to my little dove sitting on the roof," Hansel replied. "Fool," his stepmother snapped. "That's no dove, just the morning sun on the chimney." This time, they were led far deeper into the forest. Once again, a fire was lit, and the parents left with promises to return. When night fell, Hansel comforted Gretel. "When the moon rises, we'll follow the crumbs I drop." But when they set out, they found no crumbs. The birds of the forest had eaten them all. They wandered for days, growing weaker and hungrier, surviving on a few berries they found. At last, too exhausted to walk, they lay beneath a tree and fell asleep. On the third day, they stumbled upon a strange sight, a house made entirely of bread, cake, and sugar. Starving, they began to eat. Hansel broke off pieces of the roof while Gretel nibbled at a sugary window pane. Suddenly, a soft voice called, "Nibble, nibble, gnaw, who is nibbling at my little house?" Startled, they replied, "The wind, the wind, the wind, the heaven-born wind," and continued eating. The door creaked open, and an old woman, bent and frail, stepped out. "Dear children," she said kindly, "who brought you here? Come inside and rest. You must be starving." Inside, the house was warm and filled with delicious food, milk, pancakes, apples, and nuts. The children ate heartily and were then shown to soft beds with clean linen. They fell asleep, thinking they had found safety. But the old woman was a witch who lured children to her house to eat them. The next morning, she seized Hansel and locked him in a cage. "You'll fatten up, boy," she cackled. Turning to Gretel, she said, "You will cook and clean for me. When your brother is plump, I will eat him." Gretel wept bitterly, but was forced to obey. Hansel, however, was clever. Each day, the witch demanded he stretch out his fingers so she could check if he was fat. Hansel used a bone instead, and the witch, with her poor eyesight, was fooled. Weeks passed, and the witch grew impatient. "Fat or thin, I'll eat him tomorrow," she declared. She ordered Gretel to fetch water and heat the oven. As flames roared, the witch prepared to shove Gretel inside. "Crawl in and check if it's hot enough," she commanded. But Gretel was no fool. "I don't know how," she said. "Show me." "Stupid girl," the witch snapped, shoving her head into the oven to demonstrate. Quick as lightning, Gretel pushed her in and slammed the door. The witch screamed, but the flames consumed her. Gretel freed Hansel, and together they explored the house. They found chests of jewels and gold and filled their pockets. "These are better than pebbles," Hansel said, grinning. They set off, eventually reaching a wide river. A kind white duck ferried them across. After wandering further, they recognized their surroundings and ran home. Their father welcomed them with open arms, overjoyed to see them alive. The cruel stepmother had died in their absence. With the witch's treasures, the family never went hungry again, and they lived happily ever after.